She grew up in my home, always watching me from the shadows. I thought of her almost like family. But years later, she came back with one mission: to steal everything I had. My husband, my house, my entire life. What she didn't know was that I was ready for her, and this time, the truth was stronger than her lies. I grew up in a house that felt more like a world of its own. A sprawling estate with white marble floors, tall windows, and gardens my mother adored. From the outside, it looked like the perfect life. Inside, I suppose it was, at least for me. I was the only daughter, and my parents doted on me. I had everything: new dresses, the best schools, every birthday party, a celebration of my little universe. But there was someone else who grew up inside that same house, not with the same privileges, not with the same love. Her name was Isabella, the housekeeper's daughter. Her mother, Mrs. Lopez, had worked for my family for years. She was kind, patient, and she often brought Isabella along during long shifts. At first, it felt exciting to have someone my own age to play with. We'd run through the garden together, chase butterflies, even share cookies in the kitchen when no one was watching. I used to think of her as my sister, or at least the closest thing to it. But children notice more than we think. Isabella noticed how my birthday parties were filled with gifts while hers were barely acknowledged. She noticed how my mother hugged me when I fell, but barely gave her a nod when she scraped her knee. She noticed the divide, and where I saw friendship, she saw a constant reminder of everything she didn't have. At the time, I didn't understand the subtle glances. I thought we were friends. But now looking back, I realized resentment was already growing inside her. There was one memory that stuck with me. We must have been around 12. I had a beautiful dollhouse, handcrafted with tiny wooden furniture and delicate curtains. Isabella used to stare at it for hours. One afternoon, when I found her holding one of the dolls, I said, "You can play with it whenever you want." Her expression was strange. Not gratitude, but something sharper, like defiance. She set the doll down and muttered, "It's not mine. Nothing here is mine." Then she walked away. At the time, I brushed it off. But years later, I would remember those words. By the time we were teenagers, Isabella and I drifted apart. I had friends from school, and she stopped coming around as often. Her mother still worked for us, but Isabella seemed to avoid the house. Eventually, I heard she had moved to another city for college. Life carried on, and with time, I barely thought of her, until she came back. And when she did, she wasn't the shy, quiet girl I once knew. She was striking, confident, and had an edge in her eyes that unsettled me. At first, I thought it was a happy reunion, but I would soon realize her return had nothing to do with friendship. She hadn't come back to see me. She had come back for revenge. Do you think childhood jealousy can turn into lifelong resentment? It had been nearly 10 years since I last saw Isabella. Life had carried me through college, new friendships, and eventually into a career that gave me independence. I wasn't rich in the way my parents were, but I was comfortable, building a life on my own terms. So when my mother mentioned, casually over Sunday lunch, that Mrs. Lopez's daughter had returned to town, I felt an unexpected rush of nostalgia. For a moment, I pictured the girl who used to run barefoot in the garden with me, her laughter echoing in the summer air. "She's grown into such a beautiful young woman," my mother said with an approving nod, "and very ambitious from what I hear." "She's working in real estate now," I smiled faintly. "Maybe I should reach out. It's been years I didn't have to." The very next day, I ran into Isabella at a cafe downtown. She spotted me first. "Claire?" Her voice was smooth, confident, with none of the hesitation I remembered. She walked toward me with a dazzling smile, her heels clicking against the tile floor. I stood, a little stunned, and we embraced. For a brief second, I let myself believe it was genuine. Two old friends reuniting after years apart. She looked incredible. Gone was the timid girl in hand-me-down dresses. Isabella wore a tailored blazer, her hair glossy, her makeup flawless. She carried herself like someone who had stepped into the world and decided it belonged to her. "It's been so long," I said, still catching up to the moment. "Too long," she replied, her eyes lingering on me with an intensity that was hard to read. Admiration, curiosity, or something else entirely. We sat, and for the next hour we caught up. She told me about her career, how she had worked her way up in real estate, how she had traveled, met powerful people, built connections. There was a confidence in her tone, as though she wanted me to know she wasn't the same girl who once stood in my shadow. I told her about my work, my relationship with Daniel, the man I had been dating for the past year. Her interest in him was immediate. "Daniel," she repeated slowly, as if savoring the name. "What does he do?" "He's in finance," I said lightly. "We met through mutual friends." She leaned back in her chair, a faint smile playing on her lips. "He sounds impressive." I brushed it off at the time, not realizing the weight of her curiosity. Before we parted, she insisted we stay in touch. "We should meet again soon. Maybe dinner at your place?" Like old times, I agreed, unaware that I had just opened the door to a storm I wasn't prepared for. As I walked home, I felt a strange unease. It wasn't anything she had said directly, but there was something in her eyes, a glint I couldn't shake. It was as though she wasn't just reconnecting. She was planning something. Do you believe people can truly change after years apart? Or do they stay the same at their core? At first, I was thrilled to have Isabella back in my life. We started meeting regularly. Coffee dates, dinners, even the occasional shopping trip. She had this magnetic charm about her. People seemed to gravitate toward her confidence. She carried herself like she belonged anywhere she went, whether it was a crowded cafe or an upscale boutique. But as much as I wanted to believe in our rekindled friendship, there were little cracks that unsettled me. The first moment came one evening when I invited her over for dinner with Daniel and me. I had been excited to introduce them, proud to show Isabella the life I had built. She arrived in a stunning red dress, glamorous, maybe too glamorous for a casual dinner at home. When Daniel greeted her at the door, she gave him a hug that lingered a second too long. I laughed it off, telling myself I was being paranoid, but the way she looked at him during dinner gnawed at me. Her eyes lingered, her compliments flowed freely. "Claire, you really are lucky," she said, sipping her wine. "Daniel is not only handsome, but he's charming too. If I didn't know better, I'd think he stepped right out of a magazine cover." Daniel chuckled awkwardly, thanking her, but I noticed the faint flush on his cheeks. My stomach tightened. Later, as I cleared the table, Isabella followed me into the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, swirling the last of her wine. You've done well for yourself, she said softly, almost as if it were a confession. This house, your career. Daniel, you really have everything, don't you? The way she said it didn't sound like admiration. It sounded like accusation. I forced a smile. I've been fortunate, yes, but you've done amazing things too, Isabella. Real estate is no small feat. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. Yes, but you were always the one with a head start, weren't you? You had the house, the family, the opportunities. I had to fight for everything I got. Her words hung heavy in the air. I wanted to tell her that none of that mattered now, that we could both be proud of who we had become. But there was something in her tone that told me this wasn't about pride. It was about comparison. That night, after she left, Daniel turned to me. She's intense, he said cautiously. I tried to laugh it off. She's just strong-willed. She's been through a lot, but deep down, I knew there was more to it. Isabella wasn't just visiting old memories. She was measuring herself against me and finding herself unsatisfied. And when someone like Isabella feels they've been cheated out of something, they don't walk away. They find a way to take it. Have you ever felt like someone was competing with you, even when you weren't competing with them? The more time Isabella spent around us, the clearer it became that she wasn't just reconnecting with me. She was inserting herself into every corner of my life. It started subtly, a compliment here, a sly remark there. At first, Daniel brushed it off as harmless charm, but I noticed the way her comments shifted over time. One evening, we were at a mutual friend's party. I introduced Isabella to some of my colleagues, eager to show her the social circle I had built. Within minutes, she had all of them laughing, leaning in, hanging on her every word. She had this uncanny ability to make people feel like they were the only ones in the room. But when she turned to me, her tone shifted. Claire was always the golden girl, she said with a playful smile, though her eyes were sharp. She had the looks, the brains, the perfect family. I was just the housekeeper's daughter, tagging along. Everyone laughed politely, but I felt my face burn. It was meant as a joke, but it wasn't. It was a reminder, one she wanted me to feel. Later that night, I caught her and Daniel talking in the corner. They weren't too close, but the way she touched his arm when she laughed made my chest tighten. When we got home, I asked him about it. She's just friendly, Daniel said, looking genuinely confused by my reaction. You're overthinking it. Maybe I was, but maybe I wasn't. The next time Isabella came over, she complimented everything in my home, but always in a way that cut deeper than praise. This dining set is stunning, she said, running her fingers along the polished wood. It must be nice inheriting your parents' taste. Or, your ring is beautiful, Claire. Daniel really knows how to pick. I wonder what made him choose that one. Or you. It was always subtle, always wrapped in sugar, but underneath was venom. Daniel began noticing too. One evening after she left, he sighed and said, I don't know if she realizes how condescending she sounds. She compliments you, but it feels off. I nodded, relieved that it wasn't just in my head. Still, a part of me hoped I was wrong, that Isabella's bitterness was old baggage she would eventually drop. But then she started showing up unexpectedly, at Daniel's office with lunch, at my favorite cafe before I even got there, even outside the gym where I worked out. It wasn't coincidence. It was calculated. And when I confronted her about it one afternoon, she just smiled. Relax, Claire. I'm just living my life. If it happens to cross paths with yours, isn't that what friends do? But the way she said it didn't feel like friendship. It felt like invasion. Would you confront someone directly if you felt they were trying to undermine you? Or would you wait for proof? I tried to keep my guard up around Isabella, but she had a way of disarming people. Every time I thought I was ready to distance myself, she'd do something that made me question whether I was being unfair. One afternoon, I came home from work to find a basket on my porch, fresh flowers, chocolates, and a handwritten note. For my dearest Claire. Just because. Love, Isabella. I smiled despite myself. Maybe I'd been too harsh. Maybe she truly was trying to rebuild what we had lost. The next day, she showed up at my office with lunch. You've been working too hard, she said sweetly, setting down a salad from my favorite cafe. Everyone in the office looked impressed. She played the role of thoughtful friend flawlessly. But even in these gestures, there was always something strategic. She never brought me flowers without Daniel noticing. She never complimented me without slipping in a remark that left me doubting myself. One night, she invited us both to a charity gala her firm was sponsoring. It'll be wonderful networking for you, Claire, she insisted. The evening was glamorous. Isabella dazzled in a floor-length gown that made heads turn, but instead of introducing me to her colleagues, she spent most of the night glued to Daniel's side. Claire's always been the lucky one, she told one of her business partners, her hand lightly brushing Daniel's sleeve. But I've always admired her taste in men. I clenched my jaw, plastering on a smile. I didn't want to make a scene. Daniel, to his credit, kept some distance, but I could see the way Isabella enjoyed watching me squirm. That night, after the gala, Daniel confronted me gently. Claire, are you sure you want her in our lives? She's complicated. I sighed. I don't want to believe she's doing this intentionally. She was like a sister to me once, but in my heart, I knew he was right. The breaking point came a week later. Isabella invited me for coffee at her apartment. When I arrived, she had a gift box waiting. Inside was a silk scarf, elegant, expensive, and in my favorite color. It reminded me of you, she said with a smile. But when I went to thank her, she leaned closer and whispered, you should enjoy these little luxuries while you can. You never know when someone might take them away. It was subtle, almost playful, but the message was clear. She wasn't here to give. She was here to take. I walked out of her apartment that day with the scarf draped around my shoulders and a knot in my stomach. The kindness wasn't real. It was bait. Do you think acts of kindness can sometimes be used as a weapon? A way to manipulate instead of care? The tension finally broke one evening when Isabella showed up at my house unannounced. Daniel and I had been planning a quiet dinner, just the two of us. The doorbell rang, and there she was, smiling, holding a bottle of wine like she belonged there. I thought I'd surprise you, she said brightly, stepping inside before I could respond. Daniel shot me a look, but I forced a polite smile. Of course. Come in. Dinner was awkward from the start. Isabella dominated the conversation, steering it away from me at every opportunity. She asked Daniel endless questions about his work, his interests, his future goals. Every time I tried to contribute, she redirected the spotlight back to him. At one point, she leaned across the table, her hand brushing his as she passed the bread basket. You really are remarkable, Daniel. Claire is lucky, something inside me snapped. Yes, I am lucky, I said sharply, locking eyes with her. But so is he. The silence that followed was thick, broken only by Daniel clearing his throat. Isabella smiled sweetly, but the challenge in her gaze was unmistakable. Later that night, after she finally left, I turned to Daniel. She's crossing lines. She's not just being friendly anymore. He sighed. I know. I can feel it too. But what do you want to do? Confront her? Cut her off completely? The truth was I didn't know. Part of me still clung to the memory of the little girl who once ran barefoot in my garden. But the woman standing in front of me now was no friend. She was a rival. The final straw came a few days later. Daniel had been working late, and I decided to surprise him with dinner at his office. When I walked in, I froze. Isabella was there, sitting in his office chair, laughing at something he had said, her hand resting casually on his desk like it belonged there. My stomach turned. Daniel looked up, startled, when he saw me. Claire, I didn't expect you. I can see that, I said, my voice colder than I intended. Isabella stood, her smile unbothered. Oh, don't be upset. I was just keeping him company. You wouldn't want him to be lonely, would you? Her words dripped with poison, disguised as sweetness. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I turned to Daniel. We'll talk later. That night, in the safety of our home, I finally let my anger out. She's not just interfering, she's trying to take everything from me. My life, my place. You, Daniel, pulled me close. Claire, listen to me. I would never let that happen. I'm with you. Always his words reassured me, but deep down, I knew Isabella wasn't finished. She had crossed the line, and I would need to be ready for whatever came next. What would you do if a friend kept crossing boundaries with your partner? Confront them directly or cut them out quietly? The days that followed were tense, every interaction with Isabella laced with unspoken hostility. She stopped pretending to be subtle, no longer bothering to hide her intentions. At community events, she clung to Daniel's side as if she belonged there, ignoring the glares from neighbors who whispered behind her back. At one charity dinner, she even introduced herself to a group of donors as Daniel's closest confidant. I nearly dropped my glass when I heard it. Daniel quickly corrected her, but the damage had been done. People noticed. Later that night, I confronted her outside by the valet stand. Stay away from Daniel, I said, my voice firm but low. She tilted her head, a sly smile curling her lips. Why? Afraid he might realize he deserves better? The audacity of her words stunned me. Better? I echoed. She stepped closer, her perfume sickly sweet in the cool night air. You've always had everything, Claire. The house, the family, the status, and now him. But tell me, do you really think you can keep it all forever? My heart pounded, anger and fear battling inside me. This isn't about what you didn't have, Isabella. This is about what you're trying to take, and I won't let you. Her smile widened, but her eyes hardened. For the first time, I saw the bitterness that had been festering inside her all these years. That night, I couldn't sleep. Daniel reassured me again and again, but I knew words weren't enough anymore. Isabella was unraveling, and the mask she had worn so carefully was beginning to slip. The breaking point came the following week. Daniel had been invited to speak at a prestigious business seminar. I was supposed to accompany him, but at the last minute, I fell ill. When I encouraged him to go without me, I never imagined Isabella would show up there. Yet photos began circulating on social media, her seated in the front row, clapping enthusiastically, leaning close to whisper in his ear during breaks. By the time Daniel returned home, I was fuming. She's stalking us now, I said, shoving the photos toward him. His jaw tightened. Claire, I swear to you, I didn't invite her. I don't know how she even knew where I'd be. But I knew. Isabella always knew. She had ways of finding out things, through whispers, through people she charmed, through sheer determination. That night, I realized this wasn't just jealousy or envy anymore. This was war. She wasn't just trying to take my place. She was determined to erase me. And if I didn't fight back, she just might succeed. For the first time, I wasn't just angry. I was afraid. Would you confront someone directly if they threatened your relationship? Or would you try to expose them in front of others? I started noticing little things going missing around the house. At first, it seemed trivial. A pair of earrings, a framed photo of Daniel and me, some letters from my mother. I assumed they were misplaced, but deep down I knew better. Isabella had access. One evening, while Daniel worked late, I decided to test my suspicion. I left a small velvet box containing my grandmother's brooch on my dressing table. The next morning, it was gone. My blood ran cold. When I confronted Isabella, she put on her best performance yet, eyes wide with faux innocence. Are you accusing me of stealing? She gasped, hand on her chest. How could you even think that? After everything I've done to help you. Her crocodile tears were convincing, but not to me. Give it back, I demanded, my voice low and firm. She smirked, dropping the act. Careful, Claire. You don't want Daniel to think you've lost your mind. That's when I realized her game had shifted. She wasn't just trying to steal Daniel. She wanted me to look unstable, paranoid, insecure, untrustworthy. Later that night, Daniel found me pacing. Claire, you're scaring me, he said softly. This obsession with Isabella. I don't want it to come between us. She's stealing from us, I snapped. She's lying, Daniel, manipulating you. Then give me proof, he cut in. If you're right, I'll stand by you. But I can't fight shadows. Show me something real. His words stung, but they lit a fire inside me. Proof. That was what I needed. So I set a trap. I installed a discreet camera in my dressing room and left another piece of jewelry on display, a diamond bracelet Daniel had given me on our anniversary. I barely slept that night, my heart pounding with dread and anticipation. The next morning, the bracelet was gone. With shaking hands, I replayed the footage. And there she was, Isabella, slipping into my room, her eyes scanning like a predator before snatching the bracelet and tucking it into her pocket. I felt both sickened and vindicated. That evening, I showed Daniel the video. His face hardened as he watched, his knuckles white around the phone. I trusted her, he muttered, disgust in his voice. We both did. Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting, because the betrayal was deeper than I thought. The very next day, Daniel discovered someone had accessed his office computer. Sensitive company files had been copied. The IT team traced the activity back to Isabella's account. Stealing jewelry was one thing, but now she was after Daniel's business. And in that moment, I realized Isabella wasn't just trying to take my husband. She wanted to destroy everything we had built, from the inside out. If you caught someone betraying you on camera, would you confront them immediately, or wait and use it at the perfect moment? Daniel and I sat in silence for what felt like hours after the discoveries. The evidence was irrefutable. Isabella had stolen my jewelry, violated our trust, and even tampered with his business files. But betrayal this deep required more than quiet anger. It required action. Claire, Daniel finally said, his jaw tight, we can't let this go. She crossed every line. I nodded. But if we confront her, she'll just twist it. She'll cry, play the victim, and try to make us look like the villains. Then we won't give her the chance, he said firmly. So we staged it. The following evening, I invited Isabella over for dinner. She came dressed elegantly, as though she were the lady of the house, her smile smug as she greeted Daniel with just a little too much warmth. Claire, she said, her voice sugary sweet, you look tired. I hope I haven't been causing too much stress. My blood boiled, but I forced a smile. Not at all. In fact, I have something special to show you after dinner. Her eyes gleamed with curiosity, or maybe suspicion. When the meal was done, Daniel led her into the living room. I followed with my phone in hand, heart pounding as I mirrored the video onto the TV screen. There it was, the footage of Isabella sneaking into my dressing room, stealing the bracelet. Her face drained of color. Is this some kind of joke? She stammered, her voice trembling. No joke, Daniel said coldly. We trusted you. We let you into our lives, and this is how you repay us? Her act cracked. The charming mask she had worn for years slipped away, revealing the bitterness beneath. You think you're so perfect, Claire, she hissed, her eyes narrowing at me. You've always had everything handed to you, the house, the family, the husband. Why shouldn't I take what I deserve? What you deserve, I echoed, my voice shaking with fury. You deserve nothing. You've lived off my family's kindness your whole life, and this is your gratitude? She laughed bitterly. Kindness? Please. I grew up in your shadow, watching you get everything while my mother scrubbed your floors. I was invisible. Until now, not invisible, Daniel cut in sharply. Just toxic. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in Isabella's eyes. Daniel picked up his phone. You've committed theft and corporate espionage. I should call the police right now. Her bravado faltered. Daniel, please. I was desperate. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But neither of us bought it. You meant every move, I said, my voice steady now. But you forgot one thing, Isabella. Lies eventually catch up. She glared at me, her jaw tight, before grabbing her purse and storming out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. For a long moment, Daniel and I just stood there, breathing heavily. It was over. Or so we thought, because people like Isabella never leave quietly. If you were in Claire's shoes, would you press charges against Isabella, or let her leave in disgrace? The days after Isabella stormed out were strangely quiet. For the first time in months, the house felt like mine again. No forced smiles over breakfast, no suspicious glances, no shadow lingering in every corner. And yet, I couldn't shake the unease. People like Isabella didn't disappear quietly. I was right. 2 weeks later, she showed up again. Not at my house, but in the society pages of a local magazine. A glossy photo of her at a gala, clinging to the arm of a wealthy businessman, her smile wide and practiced. She's already moved on, Daniel muttered, tossing the magazine aside. But I couldn't help the knot in my stomach. Isabella wasn't just moving on. She was climbing, using the same trick she had tried on us. That was the moment I realized something important. Exposing Isabella had never been about destroying her. It had been about reclaiming myself. I couldn't control her lies, but I could control my truth, so I did. Daniel and I began to rebuild. Not just our marriage, but our trust. We started small, cooking dinner together, sharing walks in the park, talking late into the night the way we used to. Slowly, the wounds Isabella had left began to heal. I even reached out to people I'd neglected during the chaos. Friends I hadn't called, neighbors I'd avoided. I told them everything, not the polished version, but the raw truth. And instead of judgment, I received understanding. It felt like breathing again. One evening, as we hosted a small dinner with friends, laughter filling the house, glasses clinking, I realized something profound. Isabella had tried to replace me, to steal my place in this home, in Daniel's life, even in my own story. But she had failed. Not because she wasn't clever enough, not because she wasn't ruthless enough, but because no one can steal who you truly are. She could mimic my smile, wear my clothes, even whisper to my husband in the dead of night. But she could never be me. And in that realization, I found peace. Weeks later, I heard through the grapevine that Isabella's new romance had ended badly. The businessman she had flaunted so proudly discovered her lies, and she was once again cast aside. A strange mix of emotions swept through me. Pity, relief, and yes, a touch of satisfaction. But I didn't dwell on it. Isabella's story was no longer mine to carry. Mine was a story of resilience, of love tested but not broken, of betrayal endured but not surrendered to. As I sat on the porch one late summer evening, Daniel's hand in mine, watching the sky blush pink and gold, I whispered to myself, she couldn't take what was never hers to begin with, because in the end, I wasn't just the woman Isabella tried to replace. I was the woman who reclaimed her life, and that was worth more than anything Isabella could ever steal. Do you think people like Isabella ever truly change? Or do they just keep finding new victims?